Going on YouTube, Andrew Miller and Shane Black from Hook'emHeadlines.com. We're coming back at you today with a preview of Texas and Iowa State. I believe number 7 Texas. I haven't actually checked what Iowa State's up to this week.
They are 13.
Okay.
A bit surprising given the fact they blew out. I mean, last week they blew out Tech by 34 and then played Kansas to one possession in Fog Allen. So when I personally was going through my rankings, I think I had them at 9. So 13 seems a little low, but kind of nonetheless all semantics midway through January.
Yeah, where are they at? Yeah, okay, they're at 13 right now for Ken Palm too, so that's interesting. But yeah, I would just from like an eye test perspective recently, I would have them higher. They've been blowing teams out of the water in some other games that you would otherwise expect to be close, like beating TCU on the road, blowing out Baylor and Texas Tech at home, nearly beating Kansas on the road. I think that's better than the number 13 team.
They're 12 actually. That's on me. 12, not 13. But
okay.
Still, like teams in Virginia, I don't think I've looked nearly as dangerous as Iowa State, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, I mean, Iowa State recently, I think they've really started to find their identity in certain ways, at least by my understanding of watching them. From the Texas perspective, I mean, I watched some Iowa State film from last season when we picked up Tyrese Hunter, and I know we're going to talk about that piece of the matchup here shortly, but this is a very different team this season. Iowa State is one of the most impressive comeback stories in all of college basketball. I know they started to find their stride a little bit down the stretch last season, but TJ Otzelberger's done a fantastic job here, putting Iowa State in a position where they look like they're going to be contending for the Big 12 the entire way. I know it's still early on, and the Big 12 could end up flip-flopping, I think, for anyone beside really Kansas. So who knows? But this team has been really impressive to me. Defensively, very, very good. They're a team that not only shoots the 3 ball well, but also defends it really well. They don't take a ton of attempts from the 3-point line, but when they do, they knock them down pretty well. And they've just been hot recently. There's no one superstar on this team. There's about 3 or 4 guys that get the job done for them. There's some depth. All in all, for what they are, a pretty good team. Reminds me a little bit of when I was talking about Creighton. Granted, Creighton's kind of taken a nosedive since we played them. But anyway, what are some of your thoughts coming into this?
Yeah, very well coached team. Hats off to Otzelberger with what he's been able to do in the couple of years in Ames. Last year almost seemed like an anomaly, especially once Texas picked up Tyrese Hunter, and you look, Iowa State only returned 37% of their scoring from last year's team, and then right back again. They're a top 10, top 15 team in the country. So credit to Otzelberger. He is certainly a hell of a coach. They're just really fundamentally sound. I mean, they don't play very fast, 308th in tempo, but they get the most out of every possession on the offensive end, and they do the opposite on the defensive end. They really suffocate you, force you into bad shots, and make you turn the ball over. Iowa State right now ranks first in turnover percentage. Their oppositions are turning the ball over at a 29.1% clip. So over 1/4 of the possessions is an insane number to think about it. And they just make the little thing, I think, for offenses, which Texas has struggled with. Just passes from the top of the key to the wing. They're going to force you out to 25, 30 feet. Not going to let you get set up in your offense until 15 seconds on the shot clock. And they just seem to play as a team and to work as one, especially on the defensive end of the floor. And this is a team that is certainly a unit that I wouldn't want to play in March. If I'm looking ahead 2 months from now, looking at a bracket, Iowa State's a team that, like you said, they shoot the 3 ball well. They can get hot from deep with Grill and Kalsher, and then they defend the hell out of you. And that kind of leads and lends its hand to success when it comes to March Madness. So, yeah, this is a very interesting team that I think is kind of proven their worth and doesn't seem to be getting the shine that they deserve on the national stage.
they're not the sexiest team by any means from just the perspective I mentioned earlier. Yeah, and I mean, you're getting at it too. There's not one tremendous player on that team that just kind of stands above the rest. Even like in Texas's case, we have Marcus Carr, and he's been playing extremely well lately, but and well, just all throughout the entire season. But yeah, I mean, Iowa State, like, the thing that really worries me about Iowa State from the Texas perspective is I feel like a lot of the things that they do well it will really be able to pick apart what Texas is prone to be weak at. I mean, I think we've seen it rear its ugly head a little bit lately where, Texas might get off to slow starts, definitely playing up and down to the competition and not finding good offensive rhythm and tempo until late in games. As a whole, like, I don't know how good I feel coming into this game. I guess that'll set the tone for a lot of the points I'll get to. We haven't really done a video on this in a while. How do you feel about like some of the recent games for Texas? We're on a 3-game winning streak, and all told, turned into kind of a cardiac Longhorns team.
Yeah, so I think there's two ways to look at this, and they kind of go hand in hand. In Big 12 play, any win is a good win. So a 3-game winning streak should be praised. But you can also look at the slow starts as a concern, especially when you're playing a team like Iowa State on Tuesday, who's going to limit the number of possessions you have. So a 15-point deficit against Iowa State is a much different than a 15-point deficit against TCU. That's not something that Texas can continually do and find success. That said, it is a good sign to see this team be able to close out games. Obviously, the comebacks are really nice, but what's really impressed me is in the final 2 minutes, knocking down your free throws, something we didn't see in the loss against Illinois, taking care of the basketball, rebounding. The final 2 minutes have been really impressive. I've loved to see how this team closes out games. Sir'Jabari Rice has been a godsend in that matter. Definitely has earned his way into the final 5 on the court, no matter the game. I know he comes off the bench to start, but he makes his free throws. He comes up with big rebounds. He plays super hard on the defensive end, always seems to be in the right place. And that's a winning basketball player that you need on the floor to end games. But overall, I think you got to feel good about winning 3 in a row in the Big 12, currently sitting at 4-1 in the conference. You got to win those games at home too. So against TCU and Tech, it didn't look great in the first half, but it was great to see the Horns rally, especially because I don't think we should forget about kind of what the situation this team has been put in with what happened with former head coach Chris Beard and everything. And this is a team that could easily kind of roll over and, say we're done. But we've seen on the micro and the macro level, this team fight and come back and be resilient. And I think that's a great sign. And for them to be able to play this way in close games and close them out is a great sign going forward, not only in Big 12 play, but for their prospects in March.
Yeah, this team has definitely had some opportunity to build character in the last couple of months. And, I think that this is a good time for these sort of experiences to happen. I would like to say that we could see Texas catching their stride here in the next few weeks to contend in the Big 12. But, Ken Palm right now has us, what was it, 11-8 or something like that in Big 12 play.
Yeah, 11-7.
11-7, yeah.
Overall, yeah.
18 Big 12 games. I think that even if we end up at that mark, 11-7, I guess at this point would be a little bit disappointing, but that I could still see coming to fruition. If we can win 12 or 13 games in Big 12 play like we were talking about here a few weeks ago, then I think that's going to be considered a success, and that's probably going to get Texas still a high single-digit seed in the NCAA tournament. So that would be nice. But zoom in more to what we're looking at right now. one way that I would want to steer this conversation is what I've seen Texas do in the last few games versus where I would like to see them go in the next few. So, I mentioned earlier that Texas has been getting off to some slow starts lately. I've been looking at statistics all day, so I'm not going to try to dig into this right now. I'll try to find it here in a moment, but Texas has just not been playing well in the first half. I don't know what it is, but we were down. What were we down at half to Tech? Was it 9?
Tech was 9, TCU 18.
Yeah. And even coming out of the gates in the second half, we haven't been a super strong team. Like, it took a few minutes to get things going against TCU and Tech, and then Texas really started to find their stride. Oklahoma State was a similar deal, but that was more of more of a crapshoot of a game. And so, all told, I'd just like to see Texas set the tone a little bit earlier. Eventually, one of these teams is going to make you pay from getting down early. So, whether it's just getting one of our best players going early, like just getting the ball in like Timmy Allen or Marcus Carr's hands to initiate and try to find a rhythm in the offense early on, or if that just means trying to run at a faster pace early in the game, because this team just lives so much in transition that I think you got to try to find some adjustments here to get going early on. The other thing that I would like to see more of is stronger. I feel like it kind of happens at the end of games too. It doesn't feel like the defense is in sync as much like throughout the first half and then like in the final 2 minutes. I don't know. That might just be me, but it seems like we're not fighting through screens as hard. This might be a fatigue thing in the final 2 minutes. That could be, but I don't feel like we're closing out games from a defensive perspective, especially on the perimeter, as well as we could be.
Yeah, I think definitely I agree with what you're saying, and I think at the beginning of games there almost seems to be like a comfortability for whatever reason. Like, all right, we're gonna play some park ball, just run up and down the court. Marcus Carr is going to take some transition threes, and we're just going to pass it around. And it's not in sync, like you said. And I don't know, especially with the Tech game, I was surprised because I thought that the Horns were going to come out really focused and like locked in every possession on the defensive end of the floor. That didn't happen. So I don't know what that is, but it does seem like there's a little bit of lack of effort, because if you look, especially in the game against Tech and TCU for that matter, there was a lot of, in the first half, kind of open layups. Like the TCU and Tech were getting to the rim pretty easily and not a lot of contests there. And then, Texas will find their rhythm and it turns around. But there certainly hasn't been a game that I'd say we put together a full 40 besides that Gonzaga game, which is good and bad because we're 17 games into the season. I don't think we've shown our best for 40 minutes, but that ceiling is still there. You make a good point, and I hope that, the veterans on this team, like Sir'Jabari Rice, like Marcus Carr, like Timmy Allen, can kind of reel in and say, hey, this is go time, start to finish. Let's do this 40 minutes. But I completely agree. There have been way too many lulls. Texas has allowed other teams to go on spurts that really dig them into holes.
Yes, that is very much the case. I don't think that there's as much, like, it's a different issue this season than it was last year, where like last year was just those like long scoring droughts where it was like, Marcus Carr taking contested twos, or, just having someone like an Andrew Jones or Courtney Ramey just chucking up shots late in the shot clock. We talked ad nauseum about that, whether it be articles on the site or in these videos, though. So don't need to drag on about that. Yeah, like you said, now it's just getting that rhythm, finding your footing in the first half, and at some point it will become like a coaching or a player issue if this continues. You can't. even if you keep this identity and you have, say, eight double-digit comeback wins is obscene, but like maybe like let's say 3 or 4 in conference play, like there's a few more of these that they have in the tank. Like that's not a good sign for the tournament. That's going to knock you out pretty early. But anyway,
I think. Sorry to cut you off, but it kind of hand in hand. It all ties together. The offenses look sloppy to start some games, which leads to easy runouts, and I think that can kind of be traced back to Tyrese Hunter's slump. And I don't, have tangible ways for him to get out of that. Besides, try to run some off-ball screens, get him good looks, open looks, where he's not just continually dribbling the air out of the basketball. But I think that when one of your main ball handlers is struggling the way he is right now, that's just going to lend itself to sloppy play, and sloppy play leads to runouts, and then you look up and it's an 8-0 run for the opposition.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I mentioned it earlier in the season. I remember we had that conversation about like, does Texas try to run more 3-guard lineups? Like, is there a way to get Marcus Carr and Tyrese Hunter cooking at the same time? There really was something to that conversation about like someone's going to have to be the initiator, draw some attention from the defense, and then pass it off. It is really weird how Tyrese Hunter and Marcus Carr are just struggle so much to create their own looks off the dribble and create space. I'm not going to say they're bad at contested shots because they're both better catch and shoot this season than they are at creating their own shots. Like if you're someone that watches like in the NBA, or even at Texas, like Kevin Durant or Zach LaVine, I'm not trying to compare apples to oranges to some degree, but like for some reason, like Zach LaVine and Kevin Durant seem like they're even better in contested situations. Hunter and Carr kind of confuses me a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I'd like to find a way. Maybe just Tyrese Hunter's just really motivated in this game. Like Iowa State's kind of been like, so long, we're better without you. Thanks for leaving. And so maybe that's something to give him a spike. Because I mean, he really played well in Kansas State. Like that was probably his best offensive game of the season, and it just got lost in the shuffle because Texas was so atrocious defensively.
Yeah, it's been a little Mr. Famine for him, which isn't what you want to see from one of your quote-unquote better players. But he's got five games with 5 points or less, and then 5 games with 15 or more. But it really, for Hunter specifically, it seems like if he gets off to a hot start, like he's a rhythm scorer. So maybe Terry and the offensive staff can try to create some sort of game plan. I mean, I bet they will against Iowa State, but even going forward, looking ahead, where Hunter gets involved really early. Because against Texas Tech, he took 4 shots. Like he wasn't even really allowed the opportunity to shoot himself into any sort of rhythm. So I'd like to see the offense open up and try to let get going. I think we also have to remember he's a sophomore, and Marcus Carr, Timmy Allen are in their 5th year of college basketball. So kind of comparing them side by side, there's a 3-year gap there. And we saw it against Tech. Clark can heat up that, whereas I think Hunter is more of a guy that needs to get in rhythm early, find the flow of the game. And he's not going to be someone that's 1 for 6 and then lights up in the final 5 minutes and wins you a ball game.
Yeah, man. Yeah, he's not really that pure bucket getter. I was kind of hoping him to be. He kind of showed he could do that in March last year, but that version of him hasn't shown up a ton. Maybe he's just saving it. Maybe he's saving all the juice for the NCAA tournament. That's the hope at this point. I want to kind of see what your thoughts are on this. What do you? I know I'm keeping this on this conversation for a little too long, but what do you think? Like, if you had it's just first guess, what percentage of 3-pointers that Tyrese Hunter has made this season do you think are assisted?
I would say 70%.
70?
Yeah, I would say something high.
It's close to 96%.
Okay. Okay. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense.
If that puts it in perspective of how much of a catch and shoot guy he's kind of become this season, it's pretty insane. Um, I mean, this is where I was saying before, like maybe we try to run more 3 guard lineups with Terrio, Carr, and Hunter. I'm not going to look at that 3-man combination a ton from what we've done already this season because, like, I think that would take a little bit of time to gel. But you got to do it soon if you're going to try to get like 2 guards cooking at the same time, beside like maybe like Rice and Carr, because they work well together. Um, I don't know. It's tough because like you can't. Not everyone can feast off ball unless you just unless you just want to run Timmy Allen as your permanent point forward, which he kind of already is. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, that 3 guard lineup you mentioned with Carr, Hunter, and Morris in the past 5 games, it's not in the top 10 frequent 5-man rotation. So if it has been on the court, it's been less than 1% of the.
Yeah, I think I saw it like in a brief glimpse late against Texas Tech. Like Morris came in off a timeout, and then like next possession, I think Hunter was off the floor.
Harry, like, that he subbed wrong. He was like, "No, Morris, you were supposed to take out Marcus. What are you doing?" But it's interesting. I mean, this is the time to try it because I think we've seen Texas teams in the past where it's like every single game. I mean, you're fighting for the opportunity to make the tournament, where this team is fighting for seeding. And I think there is some credence to letting, lineups and players figure it out on the court while sacrificing some, current outcomes for future results. Like you said, I mean, the combination of Hunter, Carr, and Morris may not look great to start, but it could unlock something that you won't know until you try. And if it does turn out to be something, that's really effective, if you've tried it out in the next 2 months, then you can employ that in March, and it's a little secret weapon. But yeah, I just think that Texas is in a position where like they have some wiggle room to mess with right now, especially when you look at the Big 12. No loss is going to be a bad loss. So it's not like you're playing a Minnesota or, Boston College or something like that. You're really not going to be knocked too hard for any loss. So I think it's the time to try stuff.
That is true. I mean, I don't know if tomorrow night's game is the way to necessarily get that done, but Tech would have been a good opportunity just from like the matchup on paper perspective. That probably would have been that probably would have been a pretty bad loss if that had actually taken place. Like TCU just beat Kansas State. That's not a terrible loss even on your home court.
Yeah.
But given Tech their first conference win, even though Fardaw's IMAC was making his debut, who was a big Texas portal target last offseason, by the way, it just didn't. Yeah, that wasn't it. That Texas Tech is a team that Texas matches up well with and should have won more handily than they did. Pops Isaac or Pop is it Pops Isaac?
Is it? Yeah, Pops. I think it's Pops. Yeah.
Pops Isaac, not Pops Isaacs. No. Anyway, he had a really good game.
No.
Okay.
Pop. That's a name that I had to look it up because he definitely deserves respect, and for me to correctly, because I know we're not looking back, but that guy is going to be a pain in the side for a couple of years in Big 12 play. Oh.
It's true. Okay, let's get into kind of talking about the matchups for Texas Iowa State specifically. Let's start on the Iowa State side. What are you looking for from Iowa State? What worries you? What opportunities do you see? What things like that?
So, mentioned Iowa State is number 1 in the country in forcing turnovers. I think it's important for Texas to maximize every possession. Try to limit the live ball turnovers because Iowa State themselves aren't great in the half court. So they don't really run much either. But you want to limit their easy baskets. They're going to limit your easy baskets. Everything Texas gets on Tuesday night on the offensive side of the floor is going to be earned. So I think it's important that you try to play out of, the mid post with Timmy Allen. Let him operate, scan the floor. I said this on previous shows. Comfortable when he has the ball in his hands, especially if he can kind of dictate who's guarding him. I don't think the Cyclones have a great matchup for Allen. They're either going to have to play him with a guy who's a little undersized, or they're going to have to go with a bigger guy who won't be as quick. So I think Allen could have another game after putting up 17 the past 2 nights. But yeah, I think the importance here is to maximize every possession. It's not going to be super up and down. So if you have, a handful of bad possessions in a row, you're going to be kicking yourselves and wanting those back. But yeah, that's what I would say on the offensive end. You're going to get some open, knock them down, and don't get frustrated either, because Iowa State's one of the better defensive teams, not only in the Big 12, but in the country. So I would expect if you're going to win this game, you might only score 65 points, which Texas isn't really used to this season. But don't be afraid to muck it up, get in the mud, and feel comfortable playing in the uncomfortable.
Yeah, you point out one thing that I was going to talk about, so I'll skip over that. But yes, the disruptiveness of the Iowa State defense is something that is a legitimate concern for me. They do most of their damage just from steals. It's not a ton of the turnovers or blocks that they take and run. I say that saying that Osun Osunniyi is someone that, what is he, like a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year from
Bonnie?
Yeah, 2-time Atlantic 10 Defensive Player of the Year, 4-time All Defense in the A10. He is a really good shot blocker. He averages around 2.5, 3 blocks per game in his career, and he's only got about 1 per game this season. But a lot of that has to do with just like a lot of shots against Iowa State don't end up reaching the paint. And so that's something to watch. But this is a disruptive Iowa State defense. Texas can't be having as many early turnovers. They had like 4 in the first 2 minutes against Tech. I keep talking about the first half issues, but that is going to be an overarching theme for me as well. Will be just coming out of the gate stronger in the first half. Texas has really dug themselves into some deep holes lately, and there's 2 things that I've noticed that are potential points of concern against Iowa State. That there's something in me that feels like these could be an issue. One is Iowa State's 3-point shooting. I mentioned they don't take a ton of 3-point attempts considering how efficient they are, but when they do, they're very good. They're like 45%. They're shooting like 45% from 3 in conference play. Gabe Kalsher's off the charts right now. He's like 49% from 3 in Big 12 play. He's a guy that can live in the corners. Jaren can hit from the corners as well. I know he's the initiator, but they like to play some 2- and 3-man game to, get someone open off the back door, kick out the ball for an open shot. That's a lot of how they get a lot of their offense going. They're shooting the ball from the corners at a clip of in the last 5 games, which is their conference slate so far. They're shooting the corner 3 at a clip north of 50%. Unfortunately for Texas, in the first half of games, we are allowing opponents to shoot just over 46% on corner 3-point attempts in the first half. That, to me, is symbols of the same issues I was talking about earlier, where we are not closing out strong enough. Our defense is not in sync enough. And man, our off-ball communication has not been super good on a consistent basis. It's been good here and there. I thought we played a pretty good defensive game against Tech. Not great, but pretty good. We were good against Oklahoma State. We were good down the stretch against TCU, but for the most part against TCU, I'd give it like a C+. Some of the defensive issues we've had can be exploited by Iowa State if we're not crisp, again, with our off-ball movement. So we got to be better there. The other thing that kind of just worries me about Iowa State is the slower pace. Like if we end up they don't, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, tempo-wise, aren't they outside of the top 300 in Division I?
Yeah, they're a 308.
They're just, I mean, if you end up getting down by like 10 or 15 points, I don't even know if you're going to be able to get the ball up and down the court fast enough to, because here's the thing, they're like averaging it like in terms of their own shots and the opponent's shots in the shot clock, it's somewhere around the 17th or 18th second. So they're good at slowing down the ball on both ends of the floor pretty evenly. So I don't know how we could really be super confident about pushing back for a second half comeback as we have in the last few games. I don't mean to make this sound super bleak, but like this is why these multitudes of different stats I'm throwing around is just why it's so key to come out with a strong first half performance, which would be the first time in a while that we've seen that. But man, that's going to have to be there. The last thing that just worries me about Iowa State is that like their home court advantage is unreal. Like the difference between them playing at home and on the road is pretty insane. I don't think they have a single win that didn't come by double digits at home this season, and then they're 4-3 on the road and at neutral sites. So Hilton is never an easy place to play, and this year that is especially the case.
Yeah, I was just looking at it. You mentioned their home splits. They played 3 Power 6 opponents at home. Like you said, all wins by double digits, including a 15-point win over Baylor that should have was more until he kind of threw some bench guys in at the end, and then a 34 drubbing of Tech. So I think I can just imagine it's only going to be cranked up with Tyrese Hunter returning. So all of this to say, I completely agree with you. It's really all about how Texas starts this one. Because if they get down early, that's a place where you're fighting an uphill battle. The longer that clock ticks and the more points you're down. But I would say also as Texas fans watching this game, don't get discouraged because it's going to be kind of like that Oklahoma State game where Texas is not going to score for a couple minutes and might miss 5, 6, 7 shots in a row. It's because Iowa State's a damn good defensive team. And then you look on the other side, I have no numbers to back this up, but just from watching Caleb Grill and Gabe Kalsher over the past couple seasons, they seem to make a very high amount of contested three-pointers. Hand in their face, these guys falling away. They're going to take them and make them, and a couple of those are going to go in on Tuesday night. Don't be discouraged. That all kind of regresses to the mean, but I think the Cyclones are a team where they can discourage you with how they're going to get up in your grill on the defensive end, and how they're going to take and make the 3-point shot on offense. So yeah, it's a tough matchup, and sneakily one of the harder games on the rest of the schedule for Texas.
Yeah, this is a difficult game. This might be the second most difficult game remaining on the conference slate. And actually, Kansas hasn't been playing extraordinarily well at home. They've come away with some close wins. This might actually be the most difficult game left on the schedule. So let's kind of pivot here to look from a Texas perspective, kind of a more positive outlook, especially from me. I do think there are ways for Texas to win this game, which if they do would be massive. Let me kind of paint a picture here. I know that this is usually how I would wrap up, but if Texas can win this game, you've got West Virginia on the road and then Oklahoma State at home before the Big 12 SEC Challenge. You could head into that with a half-dozen game winning streak under your belt and maybe a top 5 ranking to face Tennessee. That sounds really good. The next 2 games after this one are pretty winnable. So this is the one where you're gonna have to fight. That said, there's two X factors for me here from like a player perspective. I mean, Tyrese Hunter is going to be the easy answer when you're talking about X factors. I mean, if he can contribute in a positive way on both ends of the floor, that's going to be that's going to have a huge impact on this game. But I would like to see more out of Dylan Mitchell and Dylan Dessou, the two Dylans. I mentioned my studs and duds after the Tech game. Dylan Dessou, he had one of the weirdest games I've ever seen from like a starting big man that can shoot a 3-ball. 0 for 1 from the field, 19 minutes on the floor, like 2 turnovers and 4 blocks, and that was it. And I noticed something weird when I was looking at some of the splits for Dylan Mitchell from an on-off net rating. He has the best on-off court net rating on the team. I did not think that was the case. Also, the two best 5-man combinations are the two that have him with the most minutes on the floor. It's pretty insane. I don't know 100% why. I think maybe the offensive rebounds, and I think his putbacks are where that value is being created, because I was looking at our putbacks, and otherwise outside of Dylan Mitchell, we don't have anyone that's getting 2-point putbacks. So maybe that's where that value is coming from. But point being, I would like to see a little bit more out of Dylan Mitchell. When he does well, the team does well. And Dylan Dessou, I mean, you're just like, I think just from a pure basketball perspective, if you can get like Osanaye drawn out of the paint, bring him out to the 3-point line a little bit more, that would be big. The last thing I'm going to say on these two players is like, it's been kind of frustrating the last few games to watch like Timmy Allen and Christian Bishop starting to take threes. Like, that's not their game. These are 6-year seniors. I think they're both 5th years. Those guys, no offense to them, their 3-point shot is not pretty. And like Timmy Allen kind of does like a little hop step. You can tell it's just not his game. He's effective in so many other areas. And even Christian Bishop, like, I just don't think maybe he's shown something in practice, but like, I don't think that's the best way to utilize him either. The fact that in the last few games we've been having those two taking more 3-point attempts than Dylan Dessou, a guy that at Vanderbilt was north of a 35% 3-point shooter, that to me is not great game planning or not great decision making from someone on the floor. You have so many other forwards, or you just have so many other players. I guess if I'm referring to Rice and Brock Cunningham, who's hitting the 3-ball at a very effective clip again this season, you have a lot of other options that you can turn to here to shoot the 3-ball. So I would like to see them giving it to those guys more than Bishop and Allen.
Yeah. Bishop hasn't made a 3 all year, and Allen's 2 of 13. So, I think it goes back to what I was mentioning earlier. Against Iowa State, you have to limit your empty possessions, and a possession ending on an Allen or Bishop 3 is pretty much an empty possession. So, it's going to be paramount in this game that you really don't let Iowa State you out of your offense. I think it's important too to get the ball up the floor. We know that I'm talking even on makes. Get the ball up the floor and get into your offensive set 22 seconds on the shot clock. We don't want to be waiting until there's 14 seconds left, and then you go through one motion and someone's having to hoist a shot with 2 seconds on the shot clock. I think it's important getting your offense early. I think you can possibly wear down Iowa State with your off-ball movement. I think this is a game where you could see that 9-man rotation really be mixed and matched, and having a lot of guys play 15-plus minutes and just really try to wear Iowa State down, because they're going to bring the physicality, and you're going to have to try to steal baskets, steal possessions. But I think that's my main key is don't waste any possession, because you're going to look up and you're going to want some back if Allen and Bishop are taking a couple threes each, or if you're waiting until 1, 2, 3 seconds left on the shot clock to shoot a fadeaway mid-range. That's not really what we want. And we've seen how effective Texas can be when they get into their stuff early, whether that's Timmy Allen with the ball. I keep coming back to this just because plays against you, but Timmy Allen getting the ball in like the short corner, like kind of mid wing area, 12, 15 feet from the basket. He is such an effective player in that area because if you got a guy who's a little bit fleet of foot, he will go right by him, get to the rim. Shorter guy, he can shoot over. They try to send a double team. He's really adept at passing out. That's probably my favorite offensive position to see the Longhorns in is Allen have that ball 12 to 15 feet away from the basket. And I think, like I mentioned, matchup wise, he should be able to feast in this game because there's really not a guy on Iowa State that can guard him. I mean, they have what's his name? The guy from Slovenia, Kunk or
on Iowa State.
He's injured though, so he's the one guy who lengthy, can move a little. He can match up with Allen, but he's been out for over a month, and I don't see anyone on their roster that really matches up well at all. So I'm hoping that he can have a big game and he can, initiate a lot of this offense tomorrow night.
Yeah, I mean, unless they end up rotating like Kalsher, I think the issue you don't want to run into is that they end up getting like 2 or 3 turnovers in the first half on Timmy Allen if he's handling the ball from the high post or, like you said, kind of from that corner mid-range area. But no, I mean, I do like that game plan. I think that's a great way to exploit, where you have the athleticism advantages against Iowa State's defense.
And like what you said, what comes off that is Tyrese Hunter catch and shoot threes. And that's a way to get him in rhythm because, sorry to cut you off, but what I don't want to see from Hunter is I mentioned that you need to get him into a rhythm early, but that needs to be a scripted rhythm. I don't want to see him forcing it, dribbling the air out of the ball and forcing up shots. And you look up and he's 1 for 6 and losing confidence quickly. So I think it's important to get Tyrese shots early, but make sure they're within the flow of the offense.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a pretty great way to summarize what I would at least like to see from Tyrese and from this offense as a whole, at least from what you usually see out of the starting lineup. I personally would like, I don't know if I don't think I have anything else to add in terms of this matchup. I will say this, as a whole, I was just confirming on this. I thought this was the case. I was mentioning earlier some of the net rating numbers on off for Dylan Mitchell. Our best 5-man combination in terms of net rating, it's not really close, is the one that has Dylan Mitchell, Dylan Dessou with the 4 and the 5, and then it is, I believe, Timmy Allen. Yeah, Timmy Allen, and then Tyrese Hunter and Marcus Carr, that's the usual starting 5?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's transition this into prediction time. I've been trying to think about what I am pegging for my prediction for this game. It's been kind of hard for me to get a read on it. I can see if I can pull up here really quick the betting lines for the game. I'm going to expect a low-scoring game here. That is probably where the smart money is going to be. Okay, Iowa State's a 2.5-point favorite over under at 131.5. So, I'll let you do your prediction first.
Yeah, I think both of those numbers seem fair. Like you mentioned, I'd lean towards the under, if anything. But I just think that this Texas team's been playing with fire over the past 3 games, and I think it's finally going to catch up to them. I don't think there's any reason for me to believe that where they figure out those first half woes is a road game in Hilton. While I would like to believe that to be true, it's hard to predict that. So I'm going to go 65-58 Iowa State win. Hopefully Texas can learn something from this. I really hope Tyrese Hunter, even in a loss, plays pretty well. Like you mentioned, he had that game against Kansas State, but other than that, over the past month, it's been pretty dry for him. So I'd like for his confidence sake to play well. But I think Iowa State's going to kind of control this one wire to wire, going to get Texas out of their rhythm. You're going to look up, and Texas is going to shoot under 40% from the field, maybe under 25% from three. And, yeah, I'm going to go 65-58 Cyclones.
Yeah, I think that's kind of ballpark where I was looking. I'm actually probably looking a lower scoring game than that. I think it's going to be closer to some. I don't think it's going to be as low scoring as the Oklahoma State game, but if the tempo stays where Iowa State's been playing at this season, I actually see a score that's been sticking out in my head is 60-51. Yeah, I mean, I just. The vintage strategy we've had this season of let Carr cook in the second half is going to be a tough one in this one. I was looking at it, man. You mentioned us playing with fire. What Carr has done this season in the second half is truly something remarkable. In the final, he's actually taken about half of his attempts from the field in second halves of games in the final 10 seconds of the shot clock.
Wow.
While shooting 55% on mid-range twos, 41% on above the break threes, and 67% on corner threes in that situation. That's not sustainable. Maybe this game he continues to cook. That would be great because Texas is probably going to get in some of those situations, but I don't see it happening in this one. Plus Iowa State, like one of the downsides for us in this game is like their bigger guards, or their guards are a little bit bigger. Like Jaron Holmes, kind of their de facto point guard, is 6'4". Kalsher, 6'4", is pretty switchable. They can switch off and defend guys like Timmy Allen and Brock Cunningham. So their closeouts are strong. I don't get great vibes from this one. Like I said, maybe I'm completely wrong. Sir'Jabari Rice and Marcus Carr continue to go off, and we salvage another win somehow. But yeah, I've got a pretty bleak outlook on this game. On a more positive note, also, again, we've got 2 winnable games after this, and if this goes down as a loss, if you can keep it to if you can manage to keep it within 5 points, that actually might be a net positive. When you're looking at the analytics services, because I think Iowa State's going to continue to blow teams out at home, even in Big 12 play, especially some of the bottom half teams in the conference. So. If you can make this one competitive, learn a little bit about Iowa State, and figure out a game plan to beat them when you face them at the Moody Center later this season, split the season series, I'd consider that a success.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, no, I don't have anything else to add other than that. Big 12 game is tough, and when you add going to one of the toughest venues to play in all of college basketball against the top 15 team, a victory isn't the expectation.
Yeah. Well, the only other time I picked us to lose this season was Gonzaga, so hopefully we get some luck from that. But anyway, that's pretty much all I got.
All good here.
Well, if anyone's still with us at this point in the video, we appreciate you for your loyalty and dedication to the sport of college basketball and the analytics involved in it. Also, I think we might have hit, if not yet, probably by the time this video goes up, we'll probably be at 175 subscribers, which might not sound like a ton, but the channel's growing pretty fast right now. So, whether you're a Texas fan or an Iowa State fan, general Big 12 fan, or just college sports fan, we thank you for everyone that has subscribed. And we look forward to continue to get a lot more hoops and football and soon to be baseball, I guess, content out there. So, but anyway, For Andrew Miller and Shane Black over at hook'emheadlines.com, that's pretty much it. Welcome.